Hey guys, welcome back to the readers. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is an entitled people's story. My ranch has been in my family for 3 generations. My grandparents bought this 50-acre piece of heaven back in the 1960s, and I spent every summer here as a kid learning how to tend to the animals, fix fences, and respect the land. When they passed, they left it to me, since I was the only one in the family who showed genuine interest in keeping it going. It wasn't just land to me. It was my heritage, my livelihood, and my home. I've spent the last 15 years turning this place into a sustainable operation. I raise heritage cattle breeds that are becoming rare these days, maintain a small apple orchard using organic methods, and even run educational programs for local schools to teach kids where their food actually comes from. The ranch is clearly marked with fencing all around the perimeter and no trespassing signs posted every 100 feet or so. I'm not unfriendly, just protective of my animals and my livelihood. The trouble started about 8 months ago when the farmland adjacent to my eastern boundary was sold to developers. Within months, what used to be cornfields transformed into a cookie-cutter suburban development with houses packed so close together you could pass a cup of sugar through the windows. I tried to be welcoming, even brought some of my apple cider and homemade preserves to the neighborhood welcome party as a gesture of goodwill. Most new folks were friendly enough, if a bit confused about country living. Many commented they moved here for the rural charm, but seemed surprised by the realities of agriculture, like the fact that roosters crow whenever they please, not just at sunrise, and that sometimes farms have their own particular fragrance. But we were managing the culture clash just fine. Then, she moved in. I first noticed her footprints crossing my east pasture about 3 months ago. At first I thought maybe it was kids exploring, which wasn't ideal, but somewhat understandable. Then I spotted her one morning while I was checking fence lines. A middle-aged woman in expensive athleisure wear walking her perfectly groomed golden retriever directly through my cattle pasture. I approached her with a wave and what I thought was a friendly tone. "Good morning, I'm afraid this is private property. The public walking trail is about half a mile down the road." She looked me up and down, taking in my work boots and flannel, and gave me a tight smile. "Oh, I'm just enjoying nature with Precious. The countryside belongs to everyone, don't you think?" "Actually, no, this is my ranch. Those are my cattle your dog is chasing, and they're pregnant. Stress isn't good for them." She actually laughed. "They're just cows. Precious is having fun. Besides, all this open space going to waste when it could be a lovely community park." She gestured dismissively. "And you really should clean up around here. It's so rustic." What she was pointing to was my carefully managed wildlife corridor with native plants that provide habitat for pollinators and natural pest control. I tried to explain this, but she was already walking away, calling over her shoulder, "See you around, Farmer Brown." I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. Over the next few weeks, I found fresh footprints almost daily. Then I noticed a section of fence had been cut, clean through with wire cutters. After that, several of my heritage apple seedlings went missing. The final straw came when one of my best heifers had a miscarriage after being chased by what the vet confirmed was likely a dog. I invested in some game cameras and set them up along the boundary. It didn't take long to catch her in the act. Not only was she crossing my property daily, but she was actively cutting through new sections of fence, letting her dog chase my chickens, and, most shockingly, helping herself to produce from my market garden. There she was, plain as day, filling a designer tote bag with my heirloom tomatoes and herbs, all while talking on her phone about her secret organic garden. When I confronted her with printouts from the camera, she became indignant. "You were spying on me? That's harassment. This is America. I have rights to enjoy open spaces." "This isn't an open space. It's my private property and livelihood. Please stay off my land." "Your land?" she scoffed. "Do you know what your dirty little farm does to our property values? We paid premium prices for countryside living, not to smell manure and hear roosters at dawn. You should be thanking us for bringing civilization out here." When I remained calm but firm, she pulled out her phone. "I'm calling the police. You're threatening me." 20 minutes later, a county sheriff's deputy pulled up. By then, she had worked herself into quite a state, complete with tears and trembling hands as she described how I had threatened her for just taking a walk. The deputy looked skeptical but professional as he turned to me. "Sir, can you explain your side?" I invited them both to my office, where I had downloaded the camera footage to my computer. Without comment, I played videos showing her cutting my fence, taking produce, and her dog chasing my livestock on multiple dates and times. "I have over 30 incidents documented," I explained. "This is criminal trespass and theft. That fence alone cost me several $100s to repair." The deputy's expression changed as he watched. "Ma'am, did you cut this fence?" "It was in my way," she replied, as if that justified everything. "That's destruction of private property, and clearly posted no trespassing signs are visible in this footage." She changed tactics immediately. "Well, his farm violates housing codes. It smells terrible and those animals make noise at all hours. My homeowners association has standards." The deputy sighed. "Ma'am, you moved next to agricultural land that predates your subdivision by decades. Farm operations are protected by state right-to-farm laws." She left in a huff, but it wasn't over. Within days, I received notice of complaints filed with the county about noise, odors, and unsightly conditions at my ranch. Then, neighbors started approaching me at the feed store asking if it was true I was factory farming and polluting the water table. She'd apparently started a smear campaign. The most brazen move came when I returned from a supply run to find her hosting what looked like a garden party on my front pasture. 6 women were sitting on blankets, drinking wine, and taking selfies with my cattle in the background. They'd left a gate open, and 3 of my heifers had wandered dangerously close to the road. I called the sheriff immediately while herding my cattle back to safety. When deputies arrived, she tried claiming they thought it was a community green space, despite walking past multiple private property signs to get there. That's when I decided enough was enough and contacted an agricultural attorney. The attorney suggested comprehensive documentation while we prepared for legal action. I installed more cameras, reported every single trespass, and kept meticulous records. I also contacted our state's agricultural extension office, who sent out an agent to verify that my operations followed all regulations. My big break came when a neighbor's teenager showed me her social media accounts. There she was, posting daily photos taken on my property with captions like "my morning nature walk" and "countryside living." She'd even created a geotag calling my ranch Neighborhood Community Nature Preserve, and was inviting followers to join her for farm-to-table experiences, meaning stealing my produce. With this evidence, my attorney filed for a restraining order. I also applied to have my property officially designated as a protected agricultural heritage site through a state program. The designation came with additional legal protections and a grant for security improvements. While waiting for the legal process, I installed motion-activated sprinklers at common entry points. They weren't harmful, just surprising, and very effective at discouraging casual trespassers. I also hosted an open house for the new neighborhood, inviting residents to learn about sustainable agriculture and the historical significance of the ranch. Many neighbors were genuinely interested and embarrassed by her behavior once they understood the situation. The confrontation climaxed when she decided to host a community picnic near my bullpen. She actually sent digital invitations to the entire neighborhood, describing my property as our local farm park. What she didn't know was that I'd coordinated with the sheriff's department, who arrived just as her group was setting up tables on my land. The deputies caught her red-handed cutting a new section of fence. When she realized she was being arrested, not just warned, she completely lost control, screaming about her rights and how I was ruining the neighborhood. The courts were not sympathetic. She was charged with criminal trespass, destruction of property, theft, and animal endangerment. The judge ordered her to pay for all damages plus my legal fees and sentenced her to 200 hours of community service at the County Agricultural Education Center. The community service proved especially fitting. The center director later told me she spent her hours cleaning animal stalls and learning about property rights in agricultural communities. Apparently, mucking out pig pens gave her a new perspective on farm work. She put her house on the market 2 months later. The new owners are a family with teenagers interested in 4-H programs. They asked permission before even stepping foot on my property, and the kids have actually started volunteering during calving season. The whole experience inspired me to start a rural neighbor education program. Once a month, I host workshops for new residents moving to the area, covering everything from agricultural schedules to wildlife conservation and property boundaries. It's been surprisingly popular, and even the county government now refers new residents to it. Looking back, standing my ground was difficult but necessary. My ranch isn't just my home. It's a working piece of agricultural heritage and a business I've poured my heart into. I could have backed down or sold out, but instead I found a way to protect what's mine while also building a stronger community. The knowledge that my grandparents' legacy continues more secure than ever makes all the struggle worthwhile. In the end, I didn't just teach one entitled neighbor a lesson. I helped bridge the gap between suburban and rural lifestyles in our changing community. And that feels like coming out on top in the best possible way. The next one is an entitled people's story. I've been the property manager at Pine Grove Estates for over 7 years. It's a sprawling community of around 350 homes with amenities like a clubhouse, swimming pool, tennis courts, and walking trails. The job involves everything from handling resident complaints and enforcing HOA policies to managing contractors and keeping the grounds in good shape. It's hard work, but I was good at it. Really good. Not only did I know every inch of the property, but I had also built relationships with all the reliable contractors in the area. I got to know many of the homeowners on a first-name basis and had worked with multiple HOA boards through various community issues. Everything was going smoothly until 6 months ago when the HOA held their annual board elections, and things went in an unexpected direction. The previous board president, a retired engineer named Phil, had decided not to run for another term. He was fair, reasonable, and valued my input on community matters. We had a great working relationship. He trusted my expertise, and I respected his leadership. Under his guidance, we had successfully navigated renovations of the clubhouse, upgraded the pool area, and even managed to keep HOA fees stable for 3 consecutive years through smart budgeting. The day after the election, I learned that the new board president was none other than my next-door neighbor, Walter. We'd never been close, but I'd noticed him at community meetings over the years, usually complaining about something or other. He'd moved into Pine Grove about 2 years ago and promptly set about trying to change everything he didn't like. He was in his early 50s, worked as a regional manager for a retail chain, and never missed an opportunity to tell people about his extensive management experience. My first inkling that trouble was brewing came when Walter requested access to all the HOA's financial records for the past 5 years. This wasn't unusual for a new board president, but the way he went about it, demanding everything ASAP without scheduling a proper handover meeting, struck me as odd. A week later, Walter called me into the community office for what he termed a performance evaluation. Mind you, in 7 years, I'd never had a formal evaluation outside of my annual contract renewal discussions. I showed up at the appointed time, notebook in hand, thinking we'd be discussing priorities for the coming year. I couldn't have been more wrong. "I've been looking over the books," Walter began, not even bothering to offer me a seat. "And I have concerns about how this property has been managed." I was taken aback. "What kind of concerns?" "Our audits have always been clean, and the previous board was too lenient," he cut me off. "I've been in management for 20 years. I know when I see inefficiencies." For the next 30 minutes, Walter picked apart every decision I'd made in the past year. The landscaping contract was too expensive. The pool maintenance company we used was robbing us blind. The community events I organized were frivolous expenses. Never mind that our landscapers had won awards for their work, or that the pool company had been with us for years without a single health code violation, or that the community events were beloved by residents and budgeted for by the previous board. "Bottom line," Walter finally declared, "I don't think you're qualified for this position. Your lack of formal property management credentials is concerning." I was stunned. I have over 7 years of direct experience with this community. I've taken continuing education courses in property management. The previous boards have always been satisfied with my work. Walter waved his hand dismissively. "Experience isn't the same as qualifications. In my company, we require proper credentials for management positions." I could feel my face getting hot. "My contract is up for renewal next month. If you have concerns about my performance, we can discuss them then." "About that," Walter said, sliding a paper across the desk, "I've drafted a new contract for you. Given your lack of formal qualifications, the board feels a 30% reduction in compensation is appropriate." I stared at the paper, not quite believing what I was seeing. 30%? That's not reasonable. My responsibilities haven't decreased. "Take it or leave it," Walter replied with a smug smile. "There are plenty of qualified property managers who would jump at this opportunity." I left the meeting in shock. A 30% pay cut would wreck my finances. I had a mortgage and was helping my sister with her college tuition. I couldn't just walk away from my job, but I also couldn't accept such an unfair cut. That evening, I called Phil, the former board president, to see if he had any insight. "I heard about Walter's election," Phil said with a sigh. "To be honest, I'm surprised. He didn't seem to have much support." "He's trying to cut my salary by 30%, I explained. "Says I'm not qualified." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "That's ridiculous. You're the best property manager this community has ever had. Something doesn't add up." Phil promised to make some discreet inquiries among his friends on the board. The next day, he called me back with some interesting information. "Walter barely won the election," Phil explained, "and he's already ruffling feathers. He pushed through your contract changes by telling the board you had agreed to the reduction in principal, that you just wanted to negotiate the percentage." "That's a lie," I exclaimed. He never discussed any of this with me before that meeting. I figured as much, Phil replied. Listen, I don't want to get involved in board politics anymore, but if I were you, I'd start documenting everything. Walter's the type who makes enemies fast. You just need to outlast him. Taking Phil's advice to heart, I began keeping meticulous records of all my interactions with Walter and the board. I also reached out to the other board members individually, expressing my concerns about the sudden contract changes. A couple seemed sympathetic, but admitted they had voted for the changes based on Walter's representations. Meanwhile, I had a difficult decision to make. After running the numbers repeatedly, I realized I simply couldn't afford to take the pay cut. With a heavy heart, I started applying for other property management positions in the area. Within 2 weeks, I had an interview lined up with a larger, more prestigious community about 20 miles away. The day before my interview, Walter called an emergency board meeting. Apparently, there had been complaints about the condition of the community pool. The health inspector had found some issues during a routine inspection and ordered the pool closed until they were resolved. This is exactly the kind of incompetence I was talking about, Walter declared in front of the entire board, pointing at me. Basic maintenance being neglected. I took a deep breath. Actually, if you check the records, I reported issues with the pool equipment 3 months ago. The previous board approved the repairs, but you canceled the service call last month saying it was an unnecessary expense. Walter's face reddened. That's not... I have the email right here, I said, sliding a printed copy across the table. You canceled the service call to freshwater pool maintenance on April 15th, stating, and I quote, "We don't need to waste money on preventative maintenance when nothing is broken." The board members exchanged uncomfortable glances. One of them, a woman named Lisa, who'd always been fair, looked particularly concerned. "Is this true, Walter? Did you cancel authorized maintenance?" "I was looking for cost savings," Walter stammered. The budget the previous board approved included this maintenance," I interrupted, now on a roll. "And now, instead of a simple $500 service call, we're looking at thousands in repairs, plus lost revenue from having to close the pool during the hottest week of the year so far." The meeting grew tense, with several board members openly questioning Walter's decision. He managed to deflect some of the criticism by promising to get multiple quotes for the repairs immediately. As the meeting wrapped up, Walter pulled me aside. "That was unprofessional," he hissed. "You made me look bad in front of the board." "I just stated facts," I replied calmly. "Maybe you should reconsider some of your cost-cutting measures." The next day, I went to my interview at Lakeview Commons. It went incredibly well. They were impressed with my experience and the glowing reference from Phil. They offered me the position on the spot, with a salary that was actually 15% higher than what I was currently making at Pine Grove before Walter's cuts. I asked for 48 hours to consider the offer, which they graciously granted. When I got home, I found several frantic messages on my phone from Walter and other board members. Apparently, the pool situation had escalated. The repairs would cost over $8,000, and the earliest any contractor could start was 2 weeks out, meaning the pool would remain closed through the upcoming Memorial Day weekend, traditionally the community's big pool opening celebration. I didn't return the calls immediately. Part of me thought it served Walter right to deal with the mess he'd created, but the next morning I ran into Lisa, the board member, while walking my dog. "We're in real trouble with this pool situation," she confided. "The residents are furious. There's already talk of a special meeting to recall Walter." "That was fast," I remarked. Lisa shook her head. "It's not just the pool. He's managed to upset a lot of people in a very short time. He approved removing several mature trees without proper consultation. He's been sending violation notices for the smallest infractions, and now this pool disaster right before the holiday weekend. People are livid." I nodded sympathetically but didn't volunteer any help. Later that afternoon, Walter himself showed up at my door. "We need to talk," he said, his usual arrogance notably absent. "The pool situation is worse than we thought." "Oh?" I raised an eyebrow. "None of the contractors can fit us in before Memorial Day. The residents are threatening a recall vote. I need your help." I leaned against my door frame. "My help?" I thought I was unqualified. Walter's jaw tightened. "Look, perhaps I was hasty in my assessment. The point is, we need to get this fixed. Don't you care about the community?" "I care very much," I replied. "That's why I recommended that maintenance 3 months ago, and why I objected to your contract terms." He sighed heavily. "What do you want?" "Excuse me?" "To fix this." "What do you want?" I thought for a moment. "I have a job offer from Lakeview Commons. Higher pay, better benefits. But I've built relationships here. I'd hate to leave." Walter's eyes widened. "You're leaving! You can't just leave us with this mess!" "I haven't accepted yet," I said. But your new contract terms make it an easy decision. He ran a hand through his hair. What if we reconsider those terms? Keep your original salary. I shook my head. Not good enough. If you want me to fix this pool situation before Memorial Day, which I probably can, given my relationships with local contractors, I want my original contract reinstated with a 15% raise to match my other offer, a 3-year guarantee that the board can't reduce my compensation without cause, and a public apology at the next board meeting for questioning my qualifications. Walter looked like he'd swallowed something sour. That's extortion. That's negotiation, I corrected him. You need something I can provide. I'm setting my price. After a long pause, he nodded reluctantly. Fine, get the pool fixed and you'll get your terms, but if you can't deliver, the original offer stands. Deal, I said, extending my hand. I'll need written confirmation from the board by tomorrow. Walter mumbled something about speaking to the other members and left. True to my word, once I had written confirmation of my new terms signed by all board members, I went to work. I called Carlos, the owner of Freshwater Pool Maintenance, who I'd worked with for years. He owed me a favor after I recommended him to several other communities in the area. I need a miracle, Carlos, I explained after telling him the situation. For you, I'll see what I can do, he promised. Carlos and his team showed up the next morning, worked through the weekend, and had the pool ready for inspection by Tuesday, 3 days before Memorial Day. It cost a premium for the rush job, but it was still within the emergency budget the board had approved. The health inspector came Wednesday morning and gave us the green light to reopen. The residents were thrilled, the holiday weekend was saved, and Walter was off the hook. For now. At the next regular board meeting, Walter begrudgingly made a public statement. We'd like to recognize our property manager's outstanding efforts in resolving the recent pool situation. Their quick action and industry relationships were instrumental in reopening the pool before the holiday weekend. We've revised their contract to reflect the value they bring to our community. He couldn't quite bring himself to apologize directly, but it was close enough. The assembled residents applauded, many giving me smiles and thumbs up. They knew who had really saved the day. After the meeting, Walter approached me. Are we square now? He asked. For the moment, I replied with a smile. Just remember, good management isn't about cutting costs at every turn. It's about making smart investments in the right places. He nodded stiffly and walked away. I knew he hadn't really learned his lesson, but it didn't matter. My position was secure for now, with better pay, and his reputation had taken a significant hit. Several residents had approached me quietly to ask if I would support a recall effort, which was still gaining steam despite the pool resolution. 2 months later, Walter faced that recall vote and lost by a significant margin. His replacement? Lisa, the board member who had been most concerned about his handling of the pool situation. Her first official act was to publicly thank me for my years of dedicated service to the community, and to announce that the board would be implementing several of the improvement projects I had proposed over the years, but that Walter had blocked. As for me, I stayed at Pine Grove Estates, enjoying my well-deserved raise and newfound respect from the board and residents alike. I even received a formal apology letter from Walter after he moved out 6 months later. Apparently, he couldn't handle running into me at community events after his humiliating recall. The whole experience taught me a valuable lesson. Know your worth, document everything, and sometimes the best revenge is simply letting someone fail on their own terms, and then being gracious enough to help pick up the pieces for the right price. Oh, and the cherry on top? I used part of my raise to install a small water feature in my front yard, something Walter had tried to cite me for when he first became board president. It's amazing how therapeutic the sound of running water can be after a long day of managing an HOA community. Update. It's been almost a year since the Walter incident, as the residents now call it, and I figured I'd share an update on how things have turned out. First off, Lisa has been an amazing board president. Under her leadership, the board has become much more transparent and collaborative. We now have monthly town halls where residents can voice concerns directly, and the board actually listens. We've implemented a new online portal for maintenance requests and violation reporting that has streamlined our processes immensely. Remember all those improvement projects Walter blocked? We've completed 3 major ones already. Renovating the playground equipment, updating the clubhouse kitchen, and installing energy-efficient lighting throughout the common areas. These upgrades have actually increased property values across the community by an average of 5%, according to our Realtor board members. But here's where it gets really interesting. About 3 months ago, I received a LinkedIn message from none other than Walter. He was looking for a job reference. Apparently, after leaving Pine Grove, he'd been struggling to find another management position. His reputation had taken quite a hit, not just from the HOA recall, but from some questionable decisions at his retail job as well. I know we had our differences, he wrote, but I've learned a lot from my mistakes. I would appreciate your professional courtesy in providing a reference. I was tempted to ignore it, but decided to be the bigger person. I called him directly. Walter, I said, I'm willing to provide a reference, but it has to be honest. I can say that you were organized and detail-oriented, but I'll also have to mention the cost-cutting issues and how they backfired. There was a long pause on the other end. I understand. To be frank, I was hoping for something more positive. I can only speak to what I experienced, I replied. But I'm curious, what have you actually learned from what happened? What followed was a surprisingly candid conversation. Walter admitted that his management style had always been about cutting costs and asserting authority rather than building relationships and investing in preventative measures. The debacle at Pine Grove had forced him to reevaluate his approach, especially after his company downsized his department shortly after. I guess I was so focused on showing immediate results that I neglected the long-term consequences, he confessed. That 30% cut I tried to impose on you, my regional VP had just implemented similar cuts across our district. I was mimicking what I saw my superiors doing, thinking that's what good managers did. I found myself feeling a twinge of sympathy for him. Management is about more than just the bottom line, Walter. It's about understanding the value people bring and supporting them so they can do their best work. I see that now, he said quietly. Too late, maybe, but I see it. In a twist I never saw coming, Walter eventually got a job at the property management company that oversees several communities in our region, including Pine Grove. He's not in a management role, but rather in a compliance position where his attention to detail is actually a benefit. We've interacted a few times professionally, and while it was awkward at first, we've reached a sort of respectful détente. Last week, he even approached me at a regional HOA conference with a suggestion for a more cost-effective winter salt supplier that wouldn't compromise quality. When I asked why he was telling me instead of going through official channels, he smiled ruefully. I thought you might want to be the one to present the idea to the board, he said. You've earned their trust, and well, I owe you that much. As for me, I recently completed my official property management certification, not because I needed to prove anything to anyone, but because Lisa and the board offered to cover the cost as part of my professional development. I'm now being asked to consult with other communities in the area about their management practices, which has turned into a nice side business. The water feature in my front yard has become something of a community landmark. Residents often stop to chat while walking by, and I've even caught Walter admiring it once or twice when he's in the neighborhood. Sometimes I think about how differently things could have turned out if I'd just accepted that 30% pay cut or walked away to take the other job. But standing up for myself not only improved my own situation, it ultimately led to better management for the entire community. And maybe, just maybe, it helped Walter become a slightly better person too. Life at Pine Grove Estates isn't perfect, no HOA ever is, but we've created something pretty special here. And every time I deposit my well-earned paycheck, I smile knowing that sometimes justice does prevail, especially when you know your worth and refuse to settle for less. The next one is a pro-revenge story. I, 26F at the time, had just started dating Thomas, 28M, and things seemed promising. Very sweet man, educated and quite smart, good looks. After 7 weeks of dating, he invited me and 2 of his childhood friends, let's call them Alex and Bart, for a long 29th birthday celebration weekend at his father's country house in a small French town. His father was going to be around as well, and I was very excited to meet everyone. Day 1, Friday, is fun. I am happy to get along well with Thomas's father, a smart and caring man. Day 2, Saturday. After a very nice day, we enjoy a party in the garden with the neighbors, including some friends of Thomas. After a few hours and lots of drinks, a group of people gather around a small campfire and start sharing childhood memories. This is where things go wrong. At first, of course, innocent and dumb stories as you would expect, but then Thomas and his friends started sharing really sick stuff. In particular, they told a story about how, when they were 14 or 15 years old, they found very amusing to bully for almost 6 months Arthur, a boy of their school who was very isolated and shy, making jokes, calling names, you name it. As if this was not enough, they created a fake girl profile on MSN Messenger, a computer platform to exchange live messages that we used in years 2000s, and spent to king months exchanging messages with him under the false girl identity, flirting and developing a false relationship with the poor boy. Some people were in the confidence at school, and it became a big and cruel joke behind Arthur's back. They used pictures of Bart's real cousin, and the boy truly thought he had some kind of online girlfriend to whom he even sent confessions and love messages. At some point, they got bored and scheduled a false rendezvous IRL, asking the boy to take a bus for 2 or 3 hours, wearing a shirt Elmer the Elephant, based on a private joke. Obviously, there was no one waiting for him, and they did not know how long he waited over there, by himself. If Arthur had not already understood what was going on, he found out the next day at school after Thomas and Bart told the story to everyone and even shared the love messages that Arthur had been writing. The poor boy stopped coming to class and apparently changed school, and it is easy to imagine that this must have been extremely traumatizing to him. Do you think that Thomas, Alex, and Bart had any bit of shame about it? Not a bit of remorse, in particular on Thomas and Bart's side. They kept making jokes about it and even seemed to regret that they were not good enough at being evil to convince the boy to send nudes or sexy pics. I don't even want to imagine what would have happened if he had done so. To say that I felt uncomfortable would be a gross understatement. I was absolutely horrified and started to despise Thomas more than anything. I was not the only one shocked. Thomas's father, who heard the end of the story, had the most disappointed look in the eyes. His stupid son was so drunk that he did not even notice it. I escaped the party immediately after that and got back to the house. I could not sleep at all this night, and I kept thinking about the evening and how Thomas was still finding this funny. I heard him coming to bed around 4 a.m., but I pretended I was asleep. Day 3, Sunday, was the actual birthday, and the initial plan was that I would take Thomas on a one fancy surprise date for lunch nearby, and then we would meet the group for a late afternoon party. But instead, I woke up very early on Sunday morning, took all my stuff in silence, and went alone to the train station where I took a direct train heading back to Paris. I decided to send a text to Thomas, wishing him happy birthday and telling him to meet me at a certain location 1 hour from the house for a surprise, and that I needed to go a little bit in advance to make sure that everything would be perfect. I had picked the location randomly using Google Maps to gain time. Thomas read the text around 10 a.m. when he woke up. He responded with excitement that he would follow religiously the instructions. When he arrived there at 12:30, I told him to wait further as there was little delay on something. Then I asked him to meet me at a restaurant which was 30 minutes drive from the initial location. When he arrived at 13:15, I texted him that I was on my way, would arrive in 20 minutes, and that he will understand when he sees me why I made him wait. I also asked him to order some food and the most expensive bottle on the menu. Around 13:30, he started calling me several times and sent a lot of worried texts, and after 45 minutes I responded, in French, "So, how does it feel to have people play with your feelings?" Then I stopped responding. I let him call and text the entire afternoon, but never responded. At some point, an unknown number called me. It was his friend Alex asking what was going on and that Thomas' birthday was completely ruined because of what I did. I just responded, "This is an extremely small payback for what you did to Arthur. Tell Thomas to stop calling me," and hung up. I blocked them. I still felt bad the entire evening as I had started to grow attached to Thomas back then. The following days, a common friend called me to say that my reaction was completely absurd and unfair, that it was not my role to punish someone for actions they did as a teenager, that they were adult ways of saying things, and that I had been completely crazy. Only a few people supported what I did. Everyone else seemed to think that I was a bitch. Thomas tried to fix things and win me back for a few months afterwards. I never responded to any of his messages. I don't regret it. I simply hope that Arthur, who should be 35 or 36 years old now, is well. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already.